Hello to the YouTubes. Today is a little bit of a weird day. I'm trying to get a 12-inch blade that I just bought from the Home Depot onto this skill saw that takes a 7 1/4-inch blade. The reason being I have to cut some 6-inch or just under 6-inch depth finger joints, and when I say just under 6-inch, I think they're 5 1/4. So the idea is to take that apart. I have some little washers here and stick a washer to get the arbor from this onto that. I'll have to drill a hole, blah, blah, blah. And let's see how it turns out. So whenever I try to get one of these boxes open for a weird project idea like this from the Home Depot, I always buy the cheapest brand kind of tool I want. Normally I deal with the Makitas, and I think I've been through 2 of them, but they last a long time and I really put them through hell. This is a 15 amp unit, and listen, it's probably not the best, but this is all for a proof of concept. If it works, it needs to work 6 times. Alright, so here we got the bottom blade guard cover, switchy back and forthy thing off, and it was on here with this little retaining spring clip, which is kind of like a little split ring, some kind of bullshit, I don't really know. Whatever, but here is the part where things are now starting to get hairy. Is that here in the picture, this looked like it was 2 pieces, and it looked like it was 2 forged pieces, and I thought to myself, oh, you know what, there's a screw back here, and that's how I'm going to get this guy off. But really, this is 1 piece. So, if I have to get a blade, this blade's obviously going to interfere with this part, and I think I'm going to have to go in there with my angle grinder and lop that bit off. So, we'll see. Alright, so now it's later, and after another trip back to the hardware store, actually to the Home Depot, my favorite hardware store, it's the 4th of July, so my favorite hardware store is closed, and they totally would have had this part. I needed to get this so that the arbor fit on nice. I'm not sure if this is an idea that'll work, but I'm trying to make an adapter out of a washer kind of thing. I already fucked this one up, but I have another one to try on. This is all the Home Depot had, and the idea is this slips in the bigger hole, slips in the smaller hole. I don't think I'll have to weld it in place because the clampy bit will make contact with it, and this is actually a couple thou thinner than the stock thickness of the blade. And that'll go on there, and that'll put the pressure just around there, and that'll get it spinning, and also this thing's locked on, so it's fine. I think it'll be fine. So that's the story. That's where I am now. So I made this little jig, and I'll show you here. It gets 3 screws, and I promise I didn't make this trick up. I learned this from somewhere. I couldn't tell you where. And get a little bit of your favorite, just any oil, whatever, who cares. And I got a 5/8 inch drill bit, so that's the size of the arbor. And I got my drill press running at the slowest speed. And let's give her some gas. Alright, so now we got that back flanged little thing there on the arbor. We've got the washer mounted in the 1-inch arbor with the 5/8 inch hole drilled through it. And this should now drop right on there. So let me put the washer on first. Washer sits, and there's very little play in that washer. The washer sits on that. This guy sits on top of the whole thing, and it all gets this very cheap looking chowdery nut. But now this thing's kind of like a death machine. Crazy. Alright, so now I have the saw kind of just laying up where it is. Obviously this is upside down, so this is actually going to be the cutting surface on just a piece of plywood, scrap, blah blah blah. I found it, and I traced out the shape, and turns out I'm only getting 4 1/4 inches depth of cut. I have to get as close as to this bearing, to this little flange here, as I can. So I have to make up about 1.5 inches there in order to get the depth of cut that I need. That means this saw has to sink 1.5 inches into that piece of plywood. Obviously this piece of plywood is only 3/4 of an inch thick. So I'm gonna sink it as far as I can, and maybe I'll come up with a different idea while I'm doing that. All right, so now I got the shape that I need to cut out. I'm gonna cut it out, a ½ inch of it out, and ½ inch depth rather. So my depth of cut's gonna be ½ inch. I'm gonna do it with my little router, and I'm probably gonna use one of these bits. I like using a smaller one and taking my time. That way I get a little bit finer control. So I'll probably use that. I think that's a ½ inch bit there. All right, so I've routed out a ½ inch deep kind of place for the body of the saw to sit, and then I actually ended up having to come up here and getting about 3/8 of an inch just to clear the arbor. Now it sits in there fairly well. It actually sits in there pretty flat, and it was pretty good. I'm actually very, very bad at routing by hand, but there you go. It seems to sit and fit nice. And alright, so I skipped a couple steps, and here's where we are. So, like so, and that's got to get squared up and finagled, but that's that. And then I went around and I kind of eyeballed some motor mounts and came up with this guy here, which straddles that guy down, and this guy here, which straddles this guy down. I cut them out on the bandsaw. Doesn't have to be fancy. It's got to kind of just keep them together. And then I'm probably gonna put shims under here, just standard like door shims, and put them on there to get that thing squared up and true and flat in every orientation. Alright, so here we are. Everything's been flipped up, back, down, and around. There's the motor. I got a shim in there, kind of just keeping it pressed up against the plastic handle, and that's kind of keeping some of the vibrations down, but that's something I'm probably going to have to change. Got to see where the dust comes out so I can put a little shroud on there, but I put a little zip tie on the power cord. That way, the only thing you have to do to turn the saw on is to plug it in. So there that is, and I shimmed it up so it's square enough for me, or square enough for how I care it to be. And these two tables, or the two sides of the table rather, came out pretty square. I jointed the edges of the boards before I glued them down. So I have her clamped to the table now, and let me grab the plug and let's see what happens. Hopefully it turns on and everything's all right. I think I'll call that a success. Doesn't really need to run true or straight to this. This is getting set up to do one jig. I'll probably have to mill a miter slot or some kind of thing in here, maybe a fence. I think I'll probably just do that. I ended up breaking one of the motor mounts when I was trying to install it, so I had to make another one. This tab on the other side broke off. But other than that, it's all together and it's pretty rock solid. Maybe we'll try to give it make a cut. Before anybody says anything, I'm doing this as safely as possible. I don't have a riving knife installed, and for the jig that I'm going to be using to on this, there's really no need for one. But I'm going to just do a little test rip cut with this little piece of poplar, so shouldn't be too much of a big cheese for this to blow through. I have just an offcut of walnut's got one flat side on. Well, rather it's jointed on 3 sides, so it's making a little bit of a fence now, and I have it set off for 2 millimeters to the end of the cut. That way, no, sorry, 0.2 millimeters at the end of the cut. That way I reduce my chances of kickback. I don't think I'll have a problem. So as you can see, we had a successful first trial run. It really ripped through it like butter. and it's currently 2:30 in the morning, so I'm calling it a night.